Well, I'm live. I came on about 5 minutes ago. I clicked the start for 9 o'clock, and it just kept going round and round and round and saying live, like just not ever happening going live. So I had to basically pull out and start again. And sometimes it's busy in the mornings, I guess. So the odd time it has something gone wonky when I've gone to come on at 9 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, good morning. Welcome. Trust your day is going well already. I know I've been this last week and a half, I've been up late watching the Olympics. And so I'm getting a little ragged at the edges, thinking, how much longer is this going to go on for? That I get all excited because something that's coming on. But anyway, today on Norma Talks Metaphysics, I'm going to be talking about past lives. That will incorporate reincarnation, of course, and past life regressions. The story is that one of the major things that impacted my life were two authors that had written about past lives. I worked in a bookstore as a tarot card reader and teacher, and the owner of the store used to bring people in to lecture. And a lady by the name of Marcia Moore, an American lady who had written a book called Hypersentience. And it was actually about almost like a self-hypnosis process or a hypnosis process in order to go back and see your past lives. And I attended a workshop there, and I got all sorts of information. It was amazing how much I learned. And so, to make a long story short, I had this amazing experience in the workshop. Then I had, I think, one, maybe two private sessions with her, and continued to be able to work with myself as well. Then another gentleman came to the store to do a workshop, and he had written a little booklet called Explore Your Past Lives. Total different way of accessing them. He was he was a salesman, and it was very intellectual. In fact, it was an exercise I have used a lot when doing past life regressions with men who can't just sort of flow with things, who need their mind involved. And I found that over the years very helpful. Then what I began to do was to do workshops on past life regression. And so I had two techniques, right? So I had the technique with Marcia's. And so in the workshop, I do a day workshop. In the morning, I would do Marcia's workshop. And then, of course, we'd always discuss what they get and what they saw and how it related. And then in the afternoon, I would do Brian's workshop. And so it was like, then I used to do what Marcia did, was say, after a little break, who would like to have a private one. And I had a revolt in this workshop that I was doing. It was quite a big workshop too. They were like, no, we want to do, all of us want to do it again. Well, in that moment, I created a whole new technique. And it was a technique that I have gone on to use ever since. When I wrote about in my book, Many Lives, Many Ways of Remembering Them. And being able to do past lives, being able to see where I came from, to be able to see some of the experiences I've had, has made an incredible difference on how I've lived my life, what I came to believe. And mainly what I found was the decisions that we make in life are usually not the first time we've made them, that we've made them in other lifetimes. Now that can be, we talk about past lives, but actually you can go into the future as well. Time is like a line. It's like where you want to go. So you can go in the future. Excuse me. Most of us seem to be quite more comfortable going back in the past because it feels like, we know we've got a past in this life. So having a past and other lives is really interesting. You can get to the point. Actually, I did many of mine by myself. I just sat down, like laid down into bed and went off. I went somewhere. Now there's an interesting element. What I began to learn was the importance of uh, being able to let go, to transform, to release certain belief systems or ideas or whatever. And as I explain in my little booklet that I wrote about all this, was that I had to go back. Actually, I'm saying that incorrectly. What I began to realize is I didn't remember a lot of the regressions I'd done. And that is because I completed them. I had released them. I let them go. It wasn't memory. But the early ones that I had done, they didn't do that. They didn't do transformation work. This was the beginning of me getting into transformation work because I began to see how important it was. I had to go back and look at those lifetimes that I had done and had and be able to release them. So all my memories of my past lives really are often very old, because once I've found the information and put it together and I released it all, and then it was like that was done. So I became more and more me in the present, and not so much what was going on in the past. But it is so interesting when I regress people, and when I do workshops on regressions, which has really not happened in the last few years very often at all. What I find is that the information that you can get is like mega. The information of who you were. Now, the other thing is very often, and men find this harder than women, is that we've had lifetimes in as our other sex. Like I'm a female in this life, but I've had a lot of male lives. A man has more difficulty believing he's been a woman than women have remembering they've been a man. So whatever, that's the way it goes. But I had a lot of different lifetimes where I've been men, and so therefore, of course, there's a lot of warrior lifetimes. There's a lot of times when you are stranded. There's a lot of times when different things happen. And what can happen is you begin to believe, or you begin to see the perception of what has occurred to you, what decisions you made. This is where I began to come up with the importance of decisions that you make. So that this actually in one way began the transformation work that I have done over the years, because it was like I knew what happened, but it was like when I began to realize how much more, I'm going to use the word insidious here, like decisions that we made a long time ago, all of a sudden pop up in this life. And sometimes those decisions are not always appropriate, because times have changed, things have changed, but that decision, when certain circumstances come together and you make a decision, it's like you reach back millennia, not just last week, and remake a decision. And that decision then is in part of your belief structure. And then you act on that belief structure over and over and over and over again. I have done a lot of past life workshops. I traveled there was a time period when I traveled in a lot of different cities doing them, long time ago now, when I was young. Probably 40, yeah, around 40 years ago, I was doing all that work, really traveling and doing a lot of workshops. Anyhow, what I want you to be aware of is that you're more than what you see when you look in a mirror. That you've had more experiences, you've had more awarenesses, you have had more, all sorts of things going on, and you have made decisions at different times. Now, what I find a lot in some of the other work that I do is I take a look at the soul progression. Now, there's one reading that I have done a lot for people, for not so much lately, but COVID changed everything. So, but what I used to do a lot of was we took a look at your soul journey. And what I do is I would tune into you today, and then I go back in time, right back to when you first sprang into being in this world, Earth, as a soul, and then followed the journey back on up through all of these major things that I found going and back down, where you've been, what you've done, how how you have decided certain things. And so I began also very much to believe in the whole essence of our soul, that our soul is real. I've seen them come in. I've seen the people, and I know there's books out there that talk about this now, because I found that out. I have not read them all. I've read parts of them, but I haven't read them all because I've seen it. So I didn't need to go figure it out again. It's like this big energy, and it's huge, and it's huge. And it's almost like a milky white. And then out of it drops these drops, very much like a breastfeeding mother's milk in a way. When the milk drops out, it's a little like that. And these little bubbles come out, little things come out. They don't appear very big. And then there's kind of this station where I used to call them the watchers, because I didn't know how else to call them. They look all very much the same, very tall, I usually have sort of sometimes a black robe on, but they're very tall, and they kind of look after these little souls as to what they do. And I've seen some very interesting things in some of my clients. One I'll tell you about, because it was so interesting. It was different. It was like this person came to see me because he was having difficulty dealing with life, and a friend. Oops, sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. And that's a phone call I really need to take, but I'm not going to. That's life, right? Right when I think they tried to phone me yesterday, and they're phoning me again today. So they'll get hold of me, whoever it is. Anyway, interruptions when I'm going to talk about this, because it's really interesting, is that sometimes in life we get confused, and this person was brought to me basically to see if I could help this gentleman. And what was really interesting when I got to this place, when the soul comes out, I have to follow the track back down. And so one of the workers, it said, this is a very interesting one. And it was like he placed it away from everybody else. That I don't know whether they graded us or what they did, but that they do look at, sort of watch that. Anyway, this watcher picked this up, looked at this little ball of energy, and said, this one's a little different, I think. And so he puts it down over there. Now, I don't know how they move, but they seem to move. Anyway, so they go back, and because they're sorting, that's their job, was to sort of keep an eye on and sort and make sure, okay, move on. Now they've come out. Now where are we going to move them? Anyway, all of a sudden he looks up, and I shouldn't be laughing, but to me it was very funny at the time. He looks up and he says, hey, what happened to that one I put over here? And the guy says, oh, I don't know. I'm working here. I didn't keep an eye on that. But anyway, this fellow tracked this soul down. Well, this soul was very bright. It was like a very intelligent, very, very intelligent. And they did a streamlining on where he needed to go to learn things. And I got a privilege of watching where he went to learn the different planets, the different types of societies. He learned math. He learned I think music was in there. I'm not 100% sure of that now. It's quite a while ago. But he learned about a lot of things. And at the end, when I got back up here, I said to him, I said, you know a lot of stuff. I said, a lot more than I do. That's for sure. I know what I'm doing here. But what you've learned in there, anyway, I still believe that a lot of what went on for him in his life was that he was full of knowledge, scientific knowledge, awarenesses, And it's like he's living in this in little old Earth now, where most of us are not awake. So he was lost because he had nowhere to really go to understand. He had done certain things, and I never saw him again. I said, look, I know you've got a lot of information. I know that there's a lot there, but you need to decide which way you want to go with this, what you want to do. I did not see this gentleman again, but it made me aware that we just think, the souls arrive here in the planet, and then we go to different dimensions and different time periods and different planets and everything like that. But there's some of us that seem to come with extra. And I was privileged that point with that gentleman to really see that and to know that. And mostly we go to different planets, yes. And then we come here. Now, I want to talk a little bit about in past lives as when we come to Earth and what happens here. A lot of us arrive in spaceships. When I'm beginning to do a transformation work for a person, and it shows the soul is involved in the issues of what we have to transform, I usually take a look at what they brought with them from wherever they're coming from. Like, in other words, what is the main theme? And I've seen a lot of things about people arriving in a spaceship, maybe 3 people or maybe 5 people or maybe 8 or maybe a lot, because some people call this a penal colony, and it kind of is. A lot of people get sent here because this is an emotional planet. It's not an easy planet to be on. So it's like, oh, well, you go there. But I very often find we come with a certain belief structure and that we have inside of ourselves. And then we have to work that out in here on this emotional planet that's, and most people, let me rephrase that. And most planets are mental. They don't have emotion. So when they get here, they don't know what they've come into. They don't know how to relate. They don't know what to do because it doesn't make sense to them. But I want to go back to just not too long ago, I was working with a person and I said, oh, you arrived in a spaceship with 3 people. Well, that's how I see it as like a spaceship. And I said, are you always looking? It's like you're looking for somebody, but you don't know who it is. And they said, yes. And this has happened more than once, believe me. And I said, that's because you arrived with 3, but you separated. You started having lives separate from them. So you're always looking for them, but you're probably not going to find them because you're in a different trajectory now. There's so much about past lives that you can learn. I'm going to tell you a fun little story, but with one of the many stories, actually. But this one, I don't know if it's funny. It's not funny, really. But in this lifetime, I have had lots of death around. I had older parents, so grandparents dying, aunts and uncles dying, and then one of my granddaughters died at 2 1/4, and I never ever got to see a dead person. I never got to see my granddaughter dead. I never got to see my daughter dead when she died maybe 5 years ago. It's like, and before my daughter died, I was beginning to wonder about this. How come I never get to be there when they die or when I see them? Because, I mean, I know enough what happens. Why don't I get to see it? And I was actually in my house getting ready to go to a Sunday morning meeting. And I was pondering on this. And all of a sudden, I had this image. And it was during the Great Plague. And I looked very like a Turkish man. I wasn't very big. I'm quite tall for a woman of my era. And I wasn't very tall. And I was a doctor. And I was in this room, and there were all these people laid out like in white sheet. They wrapped them up. They'd all died. They died of the plague that went through. And I said, if I ever see another dead person, it will be too soon. After that, I was given another vision, and I was a nurse in England after the First World War. And I had risen quite high as a nurse. By the way, I'm the worst nurse on the world. So anyway, just don't get sick around me. I'm not a good nurse. I was a nurse in this life. Like it came to me again, like a vision, because I'm trying to figure out this not being around when people die. And I was again in a ward where people were really, really sick. And I'd been through the war. I had watched a lot of men die. And I was depressed and I was miserable. And the same thought came to me. Now, this is like how many generations later, like in timeline. And again, I went, I just don't want to ever see another dead person. And that is held true in this life. I have not seen a dead person. I've talked to them. Yeah, that's easy to do, but I don't see them die. So what I want you to understand is that your experiences that you have lifetimes ago, mega lifetimes, if you're like me, I've been around a long time. It's, I know that I keep saying, okay, where am I going next? Or am I going to stay here on a different level and help people in a different way or something? So we'll see. We'll eventually see. And so I want you to understand that some of the decisions that you have, some of the experiences that you have, is not because of what's gone in this life. It's because of what's been decided at another time that you still haven't worked out, or you haven't let go of that, you might say, energy that's around that thought or around that awareness or around of how, wherever that goes. But doing past life regressions, I found, and I still believe that it's one of the greater breakthroughs in your own personal growth. It opens doors that you didn't realize about yourself. It opens an awareness, especially because we usually have an issue when we go to do a past life regression. We usually have an issue. I used to just do them to see what came up next, and I've done and seen lots of things of what I've done. In different time periods, many different time periods. I've been on Earth a long time as a soul moving through. And it's like really understanding where you've come from and what you have learned in this life may be very different from what you're learning in this life now, or another life, or whatever. And it's fascinating if you ever want to really do self exploration, which is, I always say, is really, really very, very good. So I just wanted today, well, actually yesterday, I sort of thought, I need to talk more about past life, which means past life regression, means an awareness of what you can do and available. Some psychics can sit down and tell you about it, but I'll tell you, there's nothing like experiencing it. There's nothing like seeing it and feeling it and knowing it, and then being able to let it all go. Because what I learned was it's coming into a life. There's a lot of information that you come in with, even though we forget that we know what we're doing. We forget why we have a mother, our mothers. We forget why we have our fathers. Like, where's the attraction? Sometimes we know when I was born to my parents in this life. I might as well tell you a story. I was in Germany I was born in 1944. So my memory was of this life before this. I was in Germany and I was part of the resistance. I was also a singer, and I like singing. I don't sing well now, but I have done from time to time. And so I was a singer in a nightclub in Berlin. And anyway, I was part of the resistance. that part has been actually often acted out in different lifetimes. And I was picked up, taken to a concentration camp. And because I was a young, pretty girl, of course, I was destined to go into service the men, which I fought. So I got kicked to death. And I got kicked primarily in my back. And since I was 30, I have suffered with back problems. And that's one reason I found out about this German life. But I also realized too, when I left Germany, I went to New Zealand, which, if you think about it, was on the absolute other side of the world. But I knew my father. My father and I had had a lifetime together somewhere. I can't remember what that is at the moment, but we had been together before. I knew him. And my mother was a kind woman. She was very kind. And so here they were, they had two girls, 19, when I was born, 19 and 16 when I came along. And then my brother came 3 years later. So they weren't looking for a child at the time that I arrived, but it was a sanctuary. And it was. I had a great, interesting life, very quiet life. But I was always wondering about God. I've talked about that before. Always wondering what God was, and because I was sent off to Sunday school and a few other things like that. So I was always questioning God. What was God, and what asking God for this, that, and the other things that I still can do. But it's a very interesting element. But to know your past lives, at least some of them, to understand some of them, is really an interesting journey, and it's something I would suggest if you're having any complications that don't seem to just go away, take a good look at that way of going in and taking a look at that. I'm going to leave that out. I have a couple of comments here I want to address, and I thank those of you that watch later and write comments, because I really do work to address them. I also need to thank for the many new subscribers that have come in the last while. Welcome, and I trust I will spark your understanding, your intuition, your awareness of whatever, because I'm just sitting here imparting some of the knowledge that I've gathered. Anyway, thank you for that. And Caleb, I just want to say thank you very much for your comment here. And yes, my better health is actually happening already, which is good. Shayla, don't we reincarnate as an animal life? You can do that, but it is good. But it's more likely the animal evolves into a human life than an animal. We don't really reincarnate much as an animal unless we really, really want to. Can happen, but usually it's the other way. The animal grows in understanding and awareness and then takes human form. That's a long way to go, though. It's a slow way of doing it. And Yvonne, thank you. Good morning to you, and thank you very much. And I thank you for everybody watching. I hope this makes sense. As I said, I went to come on. It wouldn't stop to make it live, so I got a little bit shaken up by that, you would say, this morning. And so I just want to wish you well. It's Wednesday. I'll be back Sunday. Okay, talk to you later. Bye. Have a wonderful day.